So on Tuesday is the vernal equinox, when the daytime and the nighttime are of equal lengths. And it feels to me, whenever I see the equinox coming, it feels to me that you should be able to sense something pausing or taking a breath, that there should be some kind of a stop in the dance of the seasons and the cycles, but there's not. It just keeps going like life does. There's no pause, there's no stop, there's no where you can know that, oh, that was the equinox, that was the time. Our spring theme this year is enoughness, which is a Quaker concept. It's not a very concrete concept, because every time you're in a different situation, you have to be asking yourself, what is enough in this situation? What would be enough? And so as part of the enoughness theme, last Wednesday night about 40 of us watched the PBS documentary called Affluenza, about how we're trained from childhood to be consumers and how our American culture consumes so much more than anybody else in the world. And I thought it would be kind of fun for people to see the piece. It was dated. People still had their 90s hair and their 90s glasses, and the 90s gas prices were in one shot. And but I thought it would be kind of fun for people to see the evangelist, for example, Ted Haggard, interviewed pre-fall. He was talking about the sanctity of family and all, and I thought that would just be amusing and educational before he was caught with the paid male escort and the crystal meth. And I say educational because when we talk about enoughness, I think one of the most important things to focus on is that we should focus first on our own sense of enoughness before we start browbeating other people. Not many among us believe that a trip to the mall or new shoes or whatever are going to change our lives, but almost all of us do believe a new book will. So we're in there. We just consume different stuff, ideas, books, knowledge. So first, I'm warning us and myself mostly, because I'm the one that's preaching, which Mark Twain says is an ecstasy of presumption, that self-righteousness is the root of all bad behavior. So anytime we're talking about enoughness and we start trying to point our fingers at other people, I would like to just remind you, self-righteousness is the root of all bad behavior. So as life spins around us, how do we find our enoughness? How do we find our balance? How do we find our center? Because if we have our center, then life can spin around and we still won't be thrown off. And this is not something you do one time. This is something that has to be an ongoing effort. You can picture a potter with a wheel and you have a lump of clay. Is anybody here hippie enough to have thrown a pot in your life? Yeah. Okay. So you have to have this ball of clay, and your wheel is going, and you have to slap that clay down right in the very middle of the wheel. And if you're not skilled enough to do that, which I'm not, I've had this experience over and over again, you have it a little off to the side, and then as you spin the wheel around and you push on it with your hands, it starts going, and you can't really make anything out of that. So if you and your life, like the pot, are centered, then when life spins you around and when somebody puts pressure on you, then something beautiful can be made, something useful. But if you're off center, all you do is pretty much flop around. And so nothing feels like enough until you find your center. That's one of the things I want to say. That whole sense of enoughness, you can't just give somebody a list of this is enough food, and this is enough drink, and this is enough freedom, and this is enough friendship, and this is enough house for you, and this is enough money for you, and this is enough of a job for you, and this is enough success for you. You can't really make a list for people. It's not an outside thing. It's an inside thing, and in order to feel enoughness, you have to address that little hole that everybody has in their soul where everything leaks out. Do you know what I'm talking about? You can have a good bit of everything, and it just leaks right out unless you can plug up that hole. And again, not a one-time deal, an ongoing effort. So what I'm not saying this morning is that buying stuff is bad, even though today is our designated buy nothing day. So we're trying to buy nothing today, and if you already have bought something today, don't worry about it. Just maybe practice buying nothing for the rest of the day, or do it tomorrow. Just having a sense of a day where you don't participate in the buying of things is also educational. So we're having a buy nothing day, not because buying things is bad. Having a sense that you've got to not care about nice things, that's not what I'm asking you for. Having nice things isn't wrong. Craving more books isn't wrong. Buying more shoes is not wrong. Taking a trip is not wrong. It's only destructive. I won't even say wrong. It's only destructive if you're doing it kind of mindlessly to try to fill up that hole that can't be filled that way. So there's so many ways to find your center. There's so many ways to fill up that hole. There's so many ways to find your balance. Most people do one or more of these following things. A lot of people meditate in order to find their center. Some people pray. Others just breathe deeply. Sometimes coming to church will do it, and sometimes coming to church makes it worse. Sometimes a really good conversation will do it, or you sing, or you write, or you spend time with your animals. And some people work out, and some people travel to find their center, just to see what shakes loose from you when you're not in your normal place, in your normal routine. What sticks with you? If I put myself in the middle of Timbuktu, what's really still there of me? And then you can find your center while you're traveling. And so another way that people find their center is to understand what's important in their life. So what's important in your life? You might go, I don't know. I suggest you look at your bank balance, your bank account. So your bank sends you this statement, and it shows where all your money went. And in looking at your bank statement, if someone were to look over that, they would see what's important in your life. Is it entertainment? Is it schooling? Is it clothes? Is it your family? What is it is it your church? Where's your money going? So that's one instructive way. Am I meddling too much? Talking about money is so nerve-wracking, isn't it? Let's talk about time. What do you spend your time on? If you could look at a pie chart of how you spend your time, what would that be? Is it mostly work? Is it mostly something else? What about your mind time? Because see, most of us spend most of our time working. But our mind time, nobody can tell what's going on in there but you. So do you spend most of your mind time thinking about work, or do you spend your mind time thinking about your partner or your child? Are you worrying about somebody the whole time? Are you planning the rest of your life? Are you fretting? Are you just kind of having conversations in your head with people you're mad at? What are you doing in your, oh yeah, I know all about that. I had a client who used to call it skull cinema. She was like, I was up all night watching skull cinema, having a fight with my boyfriend. He wasn't even there. So you think about what is important to you, what you're acting as if is important to you. Success, affirmation, friendship, love, safety. And then you ask yourself, what do I actually want to be important to me? What should be important to me? What would I like to make important to me? That is something I'd like you to write down on your bulletin if it comes to you. Just write it down somewhere, take it with you. What's important to you, because that is the thing that's your North Star. That is the thing that, as Emerson said, you will worship. A person will worship something, and what they are worshiping, they are becoming. So if you're worshiping acceptance, or if you're worshiping affirmation, or if you're worshiping affection, or if you're worshiping security, then that is what you become. That's what Emerson said. He hated quotations, by the way. He thought you should have your own experiences and make your own wisdom. But so I think it's ironic every time we quote Emerson, because Emerson said at one time, quote, "I hate quotations," end quote. And when you talk about balance and when you talk about enoughness, it sounds like something static. Sometimes it sounds like it should be that time when things pause or take a breath, or that you could hear something stop just for a second, but it never is. It never is. Enoughness and balance is never, it never lasts. You know what I'm saying? It's always changing, and it's not even always, balance is not even always the right answer to what you need. Sometimes you have to actually throw yourself passionately into something, which is kind of unbalanced. You don't want to be perfectly neutral all the time about everything. Nobody would want to be your friend. You'd be boring as dirt. But maybe, I don't know, maybe if you're perfectly balanced, you wouldn't be boring, because you would balance that neutralness with passion. I have always had a hard time talking about peace of mind. In fact, I had one congregation that made me a t-shirt that said, "Peace of mind is not for everyone." Because I do like to throw myself into things. I do like to go hot and go cold. I would rather be hot or cold, happy or sad, than just to be content. But sometimes you just want to be content. I reserve the right to want that too. Sometimes what's enough? Contentment. Well, all of these questions make me think of a book that I read called Playing Ball on Running Water, which is a wonderful book by a Zen psychotherapist who talked about how your life is always throwing you one way or the other. Your emotions are going this way or that way. The events of your life are going this way or that way. Your body does some kind of weird, stupid body trick, like get sick, and it throws you this way or that way. The stories that we tell ourselves about what's happening to us heave and murmur under our feet, and it's very hard to keep your balance. And it's very much like playing ball on running water, living this life that we're living. And so you have these thoughts and these stories. You're not smart enough. You're not thin enough. You're not cute enough. You're not talented enough. When you dance, you look stupid. You painted this thing. It's just trash. You should throw it away. You should probably never have even been born. People should live together in peace. I don't know why people can't live together in peace. What am I doing with my life? Are you familiar with this? This is the running water that most of us try to dance on every day. And it often feels like whatever you're doing with your life, it's not enough. So is this enough? What is enough? To be a question at the back of your mind. Because the question of enoughness is at the heart of peace of mind, for whatever that's worth. It's at the heart of saving the earth. It's at the heart of contentment. And I hear the artists and the athletes and the entrepreneurs in the room saying, I can't afford to be satisfied. I can't afford to think, oh, this is enough. I would just stop. I would quit. I have to get better. I have to keep reaching. And I want to say that's true too. You have to balance content and discontent. And how do you know what's enough discontent to keep you moving? And how do you know what's enough content to keep you peaceful and moving? Life is going to keep you moving. Don't worry about that. And I haven't even gotten to the people who don't have enough. I mean, any Unitarian Universalist minister worth his or her salt is going to talk about the people who don't have enough in a sermon about enoughness. And I was raised with, my dad was a newscaster and a minister, and so he sat by the AP wire where all the bad news of the world spits out, at least it used to, on this long ticker tape kind of thing, and you just stand by it and cry. And so we had all the starving children of the world at our dinner table, and we had all the oppressed people and the massacred people and the endangered people and the abused people always sitting with us in our living room. There was never a moment in my family where we were allowed to forget about them, and we weren't even ever allowed to cry for ourselves. We had to be happy all the time, but we were allowed to cry for the abused people of the world. And so if you ever felt sad and you were crying, and my dad would say, "What are you crying for?" You're like, "I'm crying for those children," and wherever they were being abused at the time, everywhere. But I want to say, we have to make the world right, and we have to address the suffering in the world, yes. But what is enough thinking about the suffering of the world? Is there ever enough? Is there ever a time when it's your job to address the suffering that's right in front of you, but not let the rest of the suffering ruin your enjoyment of the world? Because, the world has a balance of suffering and joy, and if it's your turn to feel the joy and you don't, that's a sin. You know what I'm saying? If you're in the middle of having fun and you go, "Oh, yes, but I can't really enjoy this because of the people who are suffering in Kazakhstan," you go, "Well, go to Kazakhstan. Make it better. But if you can't, enjoy here." I hope I'm right. I don't know if I am or not. So, I want to say, when we think about enoughness, which I hope we all do, start with ourselves and find our center and address the things that we can address. And when we find our balance and when we plug up that hole, I'm betting that we will have what the 12-step people call the power of attraction. And we won't have to be scolding or browbeating, because nobody ever changed by being scolded. Have you? I've never changed by being scolded. I've changed by being taught and by being encouraged, but never by being browbeaten. And so when we try to look after the enoughness of other people, let's just do it without becoming those people that nobody likes to see coming. The power of attraction and not promotion. All right, and let's talk about money again just for a second. How much money is enough? Well, there are studies that show that everybody thinks that just 20% more than what they have right now would be enough. 20% is what almost I don't care if you have $2 million, $200 million, $20,000, just 20% more would be plenty. That's what the received wisdom says. I knew a teacher who was always feeling poor, and she was a teacher, so about what she was making. And she did a prayer, a wish, a spell, an altar to feel rich, to be rich. She said, I want to become rich. So she did this spell, prayer, wish, same thing. And I asked her how it was going, and she said, it's working, but not the way I thought. I woke up this morning, and I went to the kitchen, and I turned on the water, and I thought, there's hot water coming right out of the wall. And I have a washing machine right there on the porch that I can use. And I have a bedroom with a bed in it. She said, I'm feeling very, very rich, but I don't have any more money. So the shift wasn't in her income, it was in her. And I'm talking about fairly middle-class people now. If you're making a certain amount of money, there's no shift in attitude that's going to make you feel rich. It's not really what you need as much as like fair wages and better job training, a good national safety net or some other systemic remedy. But there's a point at which there can be a shift in you that helps you feel like you have plenty. And for those who have plenty and more than plenty, the religions of the world say, give away 10% and then enjoy the rest. Be happy. And Islam says, give away 2% of what you have every year, 2% of your holdings instead of 10% of your income. Also very wise. Give it away, then be happy with the rest. Enjoy it without guilt. For people with significant amounts of money, again, there's a question of enoughness that arises. What's enough to leave my children? I've seen people really struggle with this because there are people who can leave their children too much money and then it ruins them, ruins their lives. And everybody sees that happening. So I have a lot of money. I don't want to leave my children everything. I want to leave them enough. What's enough? A good place to leave the rest would be your church, just by the way. So you have to figure when you're helping, how much is enough, how much will help, and how much will harm. Really, this morning, I don't have all that many answers. I just have a lot of questions about this, which is really what I want you to have. I just want you to have the questions. What is enough? What is enough for me? Have I just had enough? Have I had enough? I want to leave you with with William Ellery Channing, another one of our forebears from the 1800s. Channing said this: to live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion, to be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich, to listen to stars and birds, babes and sages with open heart, to study hard, to think quietly, act frankly, talk gently, await occasions, hurry never. In a word, to let the spiritual, unbidden and unconscious, grow up through the common. This is my symphony. What is your symphony? What is enough preaching? This is.